In my last videos, we covered 3 forgotten storylines from Classic World of Warcraft, focusing primarily on the lands of Tirisfal Glades and Silverpine Forest. However, as much as I would love to delight you all with tales from the Plague Lands and the horrors that lie within those haunted woods, I couldn't help but think about this particular storyline when it came to the idea of my next video. This quest is quite possibly the most heartbreaking story ever written in World of Warcraft, and yet many of you probably are not even aware of its existence due to its hidden location. And there's also a likelihood that even if you are aware of this quest line, you probably are not aware of the deeper lore that's hidden behind the writing of this particular storyline. But I'll get into the secret lore behind this story later on in the video. So with all that said, prepare yourselves, because today we are heading south into the Arathi Highlands to visit one of the wonders of Azeroth and to hear of the tragedy hidden within. Before I begin though, of course, I have to shout out this channel's sponsor, Zygor. It is World of Warcraft's ultimate guide add-on, and it is linked down below in the description if you want to check it out, if you want to level faster, make more gold, or get those pets, mounts, or achievements that you've always been looking for. The Thandal Span is one of those awe-inspiring discoveries when you first encounter it while adventuring in Azeroth. Like the Stonewrought Dam or the Great Halls of Ironforge, Dwarven architecture always has this tendency to take your breath away in terms of its sheer scale. But with this giant bridge connecting the northern and southern halves of the Eastern Kingdoms, something will immediately stand out to you upon discovering it, and that is the fact that half of the bridge is destroyed, the ruins of which lie below, swallowed by the waves of the sea. What happened here? You might immediately ask yourself. Was there a battle? Did a dragon attack? Or maybe something a lot more sinister? Well, if you happen into the Wetlands just below, you will find several quests and learn of what all transpired at this location. And it is necessary, before we talk about the particular quest line that I want to cover in this video, we do need to establish a few things when it comes to Dwarven lore in Classic World of Warcraft. And it's my hope that by giving you all a brief overview of the greater Dwarven story, it'll help you better understand the significance of this heartbreaking quest that you're about to learn about. So let me pull you into the world of Warcraft, and let's talk about the politics of the dwarves in the Eastern Kingdoms. The Bronzebeard dwarves, they are proud members of the Alliance, and many of their soldiers are off fighting in distant lands for their king and for their country. And although the lands of the dwarves may seem fortified and protected by high mountains and impossibly cold temperatures, this isn't enough to stop one particular enemy. Old rivals, jealous cousins, the Dark Iron Dwarves. These particular dark-skinned dwarves, led by their emperor Dagran Tharazin, are preparing for an all-out war against the other 2 dwarven clans of the Eastern Kingdoms, the Bronzebeards and the Wildhammer. It is a war that is sure to shake the whole of the continent. Now, when you start as a dwarf in Classic WoW doing your initial quests in Dun Morogh, the Dark Irons might not seem like too big of a threat at first. They're just some rogue dwarves causing some trouble and harassing mountaineers. But one of the brilliant things about the writing surrounding this particular enemy is how, as your adventure continues across the Eastern Kingdoms, the threat of the Dark Iron Dwarves only grows larger and larger as their greater story reveals itself. From the seemingly peaceful lands of the Loch Modan, the Wetlands, the Badlands, and more, the conflict with the Dark Irons has infected all of the central Eastern Kingdoms. Even King Magni Bronzebeard's daughter has been kidnapped by them, you soon discover, and she is being held hostage in the dreaded Black Rock Mountain. And for what, you might wonder? Simple land? For power? Well, that's a video for another time. A video that involves a civil war between 3 dwarven clans and an emperor who is in service to powers far greater than anything he could hope to control or confront. All that said, one of the locations in World of Warcraft that this conflict between the dwarves has touched is in the Thandal Span. Originally, this bridge was constructed as a symbol of unity between the Bronzebeard dwarves of Cosmodan and the Wildhammer dwarves of the north residing in the hinterlands. And with the construction of this bridge, trade flourished between these two dwarven clans, as well as with the kingdom of Lordaeron before its fall to the Scourge, and with Stromgarde in the Arathi Highlands before its ultimate decline. Now, the Dark Irons, in an attempt to weaken the other two dwarven kingdoms economically and militarily, they launched a two-phase operation to put an end to this critical network of trade. It began with the ambush at the Thandal Span. Cam Deepfury, a Dark Iron dwarf known for his explosive talents, he organized together a task force under the orders of his superior, Balgaros. Together, this team of dwarves managed to plant explosives on the western half of the Thandal Span, blowing it to pieces and killing many. The force of this explosion shook the whole of the Wetlands and the Arathi Highlands. It was one of, if not the biggest act of terrorism in Dwarven history. And shortly thereafter, while the local dwarves were still recovering from what all had happened, searching for their loved ones amongst the dust and the ruin of the bridge, the Dark Irons attacked in force. You see, just south of the Thandal Span, if you look at this map, is the dwarven city of Dun Modor, which served multiple purposes to the Kingdom of Ironforge. Most importantly, it was a military stronghold that protected Cosmodan from any threats in the north. If the Scourge, just for example, had managed to reach the Thandal Span, they would have to go through the forces of Dun Modor in order to reach the heartlands of the Kingdom of Ironforge. But second, this dwarven city also was an important trading hub that acted as an in-between for the Wildhammer and the Bronzebeard dwarves. So to attack and to seize this location, it would be devastating for the economies of both kingdoms, which is exactly why the Dark Irons launched one of their attacks right here. The battle for Dun Modor was brief but brutal, and soon the whole of the dwarven city was in Dark Iron hands, where it remained all throughout Classic WoW. And perhaps the Dark Iron dwarves, after claiming this prize city, perhaps they intended to destroy the second bridge of the Thandal Span, or perhaps maybe they intentionally left it alone so that the bridge would remain repairable should the Dark Irons manage to claim the whole of the region, the Wetlands and the southern Arathi Highlands. We're not entirely sure what the final Dark Iron dwarf plot was for this area, because before they could proceed with their next phase of their operation, adventurers from the Alliance were able to band together and reclaim the city for the Kingdom of Ironforge. The battle for the Thandal Span for the north of the Wetlands, it ended with a victory for the forces of the Alliance, but regardless, the damage to this area of the world was done. We can't say exactly how many died in the explosion of the Thandal Span or the siege of Dun Modor. Certainly many Ironforged dwarves placed on the bridge and in the city to defend the northern reaches of their kingdom died in this assault. Civilians, traders, Wildhammer dwarves, refugees from Lordaeron perhaps. The Dark Iron attack on this area of the world likely affected many more than just their dwarven cousins, and it's amongst the ruins of the Thandal Span, the remnants of this battle, that something rather curious can be found. A quest hidden away in a location that you would likely never go to unless you're the explorer type of player. For you see, nothing will lead you to do this but your own desire for discovery. But if you jump from the bridge and you swim down beneath the water, you will see the ruins of the Thandal Span and the battle that occurred between the forces of Ironforge and the Dark Iron dwarves. And among all these silent stones and the decaying beams of wood and the bones of many dead, you will find a particular corpse of a certain dwarf. And in his hand is an envelope which you can pick up and collect, beginning a new adventure. The envelope is certainly damaged from its time beneath the rolling waters, but upon opening it, you will not only be given a quest, but you will find that the note is still readable. It's quite long though, which is why many of you probably have never actually bothered to read it. But if you do read it, well, let me read it to you, and then you'll understand why I wanted to make this video in particular for you all. Here we go. My dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move to take watch over the Thandal Span in a few days. Lest I shall not be able to write to you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. Our assignment may be one of a few days' duration and full of pleasure, and it may be one of severe conflict and death to me, if it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for the Alliance. I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly the Kingdom of Ironforge leans on the triumph of the Alliance, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and the suffering of the great wars. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all of my joys in this life to help maintain this alliance and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me in mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence could break, and my love of kingdom comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all these chains to the battlefield. The memories of all the blissful moments I have spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to the light and you that I have enjoyed them for so long, and how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years when we might still have lived and loved together and seen our sons grow up to honorable dwarfhood around us. I know I have but a few and small claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar, that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you. And when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, I shall whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and many pains I have caused you, how thoughtless, how foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness and struggle with all the misfortunes of this world to shield you and my dear children from harm. But I cannot. I must watch you from the twisting nether and hover near you while you buffet the storms with your precious little freight, and wait with the sad patience till we meet to part no more. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to Azeroth and flit unseen around those they love, I shall always be near you in the gladdest day and in the darkest night, amidst your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours always, always. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheeks, it shall be my breath. As the cool air fans your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for thee, for we shall meet again. Sully. I think something that immediately stands out about this letter is the beginning, where Sully seems to indicate that his reassignment to the Thandal Span, to that bridge, is somehow a bad thing. Like, he knows something is coming and that his assignment to that post will likely be his end. And I think that despite the fact the Dark Iron Dwarves haven't yet done anything in the Wetlands area at the time of Sully writing this letter, there is clearly an air that they soon will. And Dunmador and the Thandal Span was likely going to be their target due to their significance, but we can only speculate as to where this fear in Sully's heart was coming from. For me, I think it just comes from the fact that there was clearly conflict happening in the northern wetlands long before this letter was written, which is why there was this dread, this sense of doom in Sully's letter. But the second thing that stands out in this letter, at least to me, is how strongly this piece of writing creates world building for the dwarves of Cosmodan. This dwarf, Sully, clearly demonstrates, first of all, how honorable he is, sharing his appreciation for the Alliance and all that it does for the dwarves of Ironforge. But also, he shows his love of his home and country, saying that he's willing to lay down his life for the peace that the Kingdom of Ironforge and that the Alliance has given him in his lifetime. Under these two banners, he has been able to find a wife, sire children, and he's ready to repay that debt that he owes, should it be asked of him. And honestly, I find words like these just so inspiring, even outside of the game, because it shows that somebody not only stands for something, but will live and they will die for something as well. This letter, however, as you can imagine, it does need to be delivered, as there's clearly a grieving wife somewhere in Cosmodan awaiting word from her dead husband. Does she even know that he's dead, though? Does she know how much he loved her? I mean, he seems to imply in this letter that the couple had some difficulties in their day. I wonder if she knows how sorry he was and how much he really did care about her. We're going to need to find out. The letter, we discover, is addressed to Sarah Ballou, written by Sully Ballou, and it says that she resides somewhere in Ironforge. So southward we are going, everybody, as an ill guest bearing ill news to the heartlands of the Kingdom of Ironforge. The snows of Dunmoreau have always had just such a comfy vibe to them, and yet hidden behind this apparent winter wonderland are so many stories of tragedy, loss, and of broken families. And it's here, located within the great mountains, that we enter into Ironforge, and after a brief time of searching, we discover Sarah Ballou, who still waits patiently for news of her husband and his deployment. A small thing that I would like to note here before we turn in the quest is her positioning in Ironforge. Sarah stands near the doorway of her home, staring out into the crowds of the city, seemingly leaning against the railway of her front porch. This right here almost invokes the image of all the paintings that have been created over the years of wives, mothers, or sisters sitting and awaiting the return of their husbands, sons, or brothers from war. Silently, she stands in Ironforge, and from the crowds you emerge, bearing the news she has long awaited to hear. When the letter is given to her, she is temporarily in shock. The weight of it all, the conflict against the Dark Iron Dwarves, the sudden realization of her widowhood, it's all too much. And in a loud and broken voice, she cries out, begging for her husband and weeping profusely. But after a moment, Sarah, she regains her composure, and she requests that you wait but a moment. With tears in her eyes, she writes a letter of her own, containing her sorrows and pleas to none other than the king himself. She turns to you and requests that you deliver this letter to the King of the Bronzebeards, as she is too grief-stricken and would not be able to maintain her composure in her current state. For many players, non-dwarf player that is, this may likely be their first time ever being granted an audience with the king through Classic WoW's quests. It is truly a great honor indeed. So with the letter in hand and farewell said, we leave behind Sarah to her mourning, and we begin our walk to the King's Chamber of Ironforge. Temptation might seize a curious soul, though. Sarah's letter is a readable item, and although perhaps we should respect the privacy, well, let's read her letter and let's see what she has to say.
To my honorable king, 'tis not the place of a lowly soldier's wife to question the actions of great leaders such as yourself. The battles that rage across our lands are being fought to preserve the great life we know and love. From the cool waters of Loch Modan to the brisk, snow-capped peaks of Dunmoreau. But the wars we wage in the name of preservation are to come at what cost? Upon the death of which fallen soldier do we realize that the very life we strive to save is slipping from us on the battlefield? Under how many swords and axes must we throw our future? Under how many feet of sodden soil must we bury our past? It is not the place of the lowly soldier's wife to ask such questions. Yet I write to you now as the lowly soldier's widow. My husband might have been one soldier in the ranks of thousands to you. To me, he was the great Sully Ballou, father of my children, and my one partner in this life. Forgive me if my questions to you, O great leader, ring inappropriate, but the dead cannot ask these questions for themselves. Your loyal subject, Sarah Ballou.
Everybody, this right here is the heart of the overall Dwarven story in Classic World of Warcraft. I honestly think that no other quest really captures it better than this one. This looming war with the Dark Iron Dwarves, the skirmishes across Cosmodan, and the price of it all. So many dead, their bodies cold and frozen in the mountains, or forgotten beneath rubble in the shimmering waters of the sea. From all around, the kingdom of Ironforge is beset upon by the growing fires of war, and it falls to us to try to stop this growing violence, as well as heal the wounds that have been left behind. I love the Dwarven vibe in Classic World of Warcraft, the kingdom encroached upon on all sides, and the grief that comes with that story. It's fantastic, but let's continue with what happens next. After a quick trip across the city, we enter the king's chamber and we find a dwarf with the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, as well as the knowledge of the inevitability of an all-out open conflict with his Dark Iron cousins. And after taking a moment to read the letter after we hand it over, the king, he lets out this long sigh. And this is what he says.
I do not expect good dwarfs like Mrs. Ballou to understand why the travesties of war must be endured for the greater good of our people. The loss of her husband, and the loss of every dwarf that fights in the name of the Alliance, weighs heavy on my soul. While I cannot bring her husband back from the Twisting Nether, I can pay tribute to him. I'm going to commission a memorial to Sully Ballou to be built by Grant Mason Mableston. Send word to him now. You shall be custodian of my bidding.
You know, King Magni Bronzebeard doesn't really have too many quests associated with him in Classic WoW, and yet every time there's a quest that involves this dwarf, every interaction with him is impactful. He is aware of how much these conflicts wound his people, both on the battlefield and at home, but such battles, and even losses, unfortunately, it's all necessary to preserve the relative peace that the citizens of the Kingdom of Ironforge have enjoyed over all these years. And although King Magni Bronzebeard does not have the power to restore life to Sully, he says, this fallen hero of Ironforge, he instead decides that he wishes to honor him with a tribute. What follows in the next part of this storyline is an adventure that takes us to the Grand Mason of Ironforge, Mableston, who King Magni has tasked with creating a memorial stone for Sully and all those fallen heroes of Ironforge's kingdom. Upon meeting the Master Mason, we are tasked with returning north to Hillsbrad Foothills, where we must gather Altaric granite, which is some of the finest stone for making high-quality memorials such as these. And after this short adventure back northward and upon returning to Ironforge stone in hand, the Grand Mason constructs this memorial to Sully Ballou downstairs in his shop to be delivered to the king. This part of the quest line is fairly straightforward. Just get the stone, deliver the stone, and watch as the Mason constructs the tribute. And with all that done, after meeting Sarah Ballou and comforting her to what degree we can, having an audience with the king where we talk about the horrors of war and the necessity of sacrifice, to even meeting the Master Mason of Ironforge and having a tribute built right in front of our eyes, we conclude our adventure across the Eastern Kingdoms, having honored a hero of the Alliance that, had we not made the foolish decision of jumping off the Thandal Span, we never would have discovered and been able to deliver his letter to his grieving wife. This quest line, although it is rather out of the way and doesn't offer much in the way of experience points, it is one of my favorites in Classic World of Warcraft because it really is one of the game's forgotten love stories that's rarely talked about. This questline even ends with you being rewarded with none other than a ring, which gives 5 stamina and 4 spirit. A pretty good ring, if I do say so myself. And how symbolic, how symbolic that a ring is the reward, considering that the whole questline involves you reconnecting a married couple torn apart by the tragedy of war. I don't know, but I've always loved this quest, and I hope that you take a chance to do it yourselves one day if you're ever questing again through Classic WoW. And now, for the moment in this video that some of you that are aware of this questline have probably been waiting for to see if I would discuss this. Now, I don't want to break your hearts any further, and I'm probably about to blow some minds here, but this letter, this entire quest chain, is actually real. Sully's letter is based on an actual historical letter written by Sullivan Ballou, a Union soldier during the American Civil War, to his wife, Sarah. Blizzard copied his letter almost word for word in places, shortening it in some areas, of course, as a homage to this fallen veteran in America's history. Sullivan, he wrote this letter allegedly just before the first Battle of Bull Run outside of Manassas, Virginia, which is only a few hours drive north of where I live, fun fact. And during that battle against the Confederates, Sullivan was hit by a cannonball, which tore off part of his leg and killed his horse instantly. Now, he was treated to the best of the field doctor's ability, but when the Confederates overran the Union position, the Northern Army, they had to flee and they ran back to Washington, leaving Sullivan behind to die of his injuries a week later. As for his letter, well, as you can probably already assume, it was never delivered. It was found only long after his death, but it was ultimately delivered to Sarah, who had never remarried. She actually passed away only in 1917. Today, she is buried beside her husband, who has a monument built in his honor. So it's a very similar story to the one that you just took part in through World of Warcraft. And hey, I bet you didn't expect that you would learn some Civil War history in a World of Warcraft video, now did you? All that said, thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, please take a moment to hit the like button and leave a comment for the algorithm. It really helps. And if you enjoy what I create, consider becoming a channel member to unlock behind the scenes videos, badges for your name here on the Nixium channel, as well as some custom emotes. Thank you all in advance, and I will see you all with our next forgotten story in Classic World of Warcraft.